Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney at the R&R Law Group. We're located in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. And today we are celebrating, is the word I should say, the departure of one of the worst congresspeople that's ever existed. Her name is Liz Cheney. And before we get into it, just a moment of thanks, a moment of gratitude, a big fat cheers to our friends in Wyoming. Grab whatever beverage you have around your table, my friends. I'm having a little blackberry bubbly. And cheers to our friends in Wyoming. Cheers, my friends, to a beautiful election victory. Cheers. Oh, yeah, that's some good stuff right there. Cheers to a victory. And that is what we're going to be talking about today. And so as usual, let's go over to our mind map just so we can see what is cooking. And you can see we've got three segments. Top segment being Liz Cheney, you are fired. We're going to go unpack all of this. There is a lot of news to attend to. And so let's open up this tentacle. And you can see here, boy, oh boy, she lost by a whopper. 37 points. This is the woman who is supposed to be kind of leading the Republican Party to higher ground or something, and she lost by 37 points. So we are going to unpack that. She had a whopper of a loser speech, I guess is the word, where she was comparing herself to Abraham Lincoln and Ulysses S. Grant. Now, you may remember them from that little incident in American history called the Civil War. She says that she's on sort of a similar path to them. She is prognosticating that she's going to be running in 2024. So we're going to have to listen to her sort of try to sell us that one. And then we're going to go through Trump's reactions. And there is one of the most epic meme threads that we'll get to at the end of this segment. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like it. Benny Johnson on Twitter posted this meme thread, and where did I link it? I linked it over on Locals. We'll get to it, but it is just a whopper. So we'll spend some time having some fun there. But after that segment, we've got then some serious business to attend to because there is new updates in the Donald Trump Mar-a-Lago invasion, home invasion by the FBI. That is still sort of in this gray area where we're trying to find out what actually happened. People are demanding answers from the DOJ. We've covered a whole slew of senators and Republican congressmen who've demanded answers, and we still don't know a whole lot, but we are learning more. We're going to, of course, take a look at the court docket because there was an entry that came out right before the show started. Like, I just checked it. I just hit refresh on the court docket. And so this came in from the media. And if you've been here, at prior days this week, we've been talking about this sort of compounding litany of media companies that are all filing motions and notices of appearance and saying, we want the warrant unsealed and we want this and we want to see this. Right, we got Dow Jones, ABC, cable news, New York Times is over there, Times, American Broadcasting, ABC, right? They're all there. And the government said, no, we're not unsealing this, or we don't want you, judge, to unseal this. And today we've got that consolidated response. Okay, so the entirety, like all of the media, they consolidated their responses and they sent this back over to the judge. You can see I highlighted here the reply to the response. And so what that means is they filed the original motion to unseal the warrant. The prosecutors filed their response saying, don't unseal it, judge. And they're replying to the response. So it's sort of like a sandwich. One layer goes on, the next layer, and then the third layer. This is the media company's third layer. It's not a huge motion. It's about 11 pages. So we are going to get into that. That's part of the Trump saga, that we'll have to continue to follow. Now, there's more evidence also that Donald Trump and his family, they actually got to sit down and watch all of the raid footage. So as fun as that sounds, to be somebody who has to sit there and watch strangers, federal agents, rummaging through your closet, right? Not a real fun ordeal. And a lot of people say, well, it's Donald Trump. Who cares about him? It's his home. It's his house. And so, we've talked a lot about this. Have you ever had your locker broken into in high school or had your car broken into in college or recently, or had your home broken into, right? It's a very, very problematic thing. Just because they have a gun and a badge doesn't make it suddenly feel like, oh, well, I'm sure they respected all Melania's underwear. Don't think so. So the family sat down and got to watch the whole thing. And so, kind of want to unpack that for a bit. Eric Trump seems like he's hot as hell, obviously. And he was out saying that they actually have that footage, right? So not only did they watch it, they've got it, and they're prepared to release it when necessary. And so we'll listen to Eric Trump tell us about that. Scott Perry was sort of the number two. He was a representative who got his phone seized. So they had sort of the 1-2 punch. Remember, they went after Trump. Then they took this over and got Scott Perry. They had Rick Perry's from Texas. Scott Perry was the guy who had his cell phone seized when he was on the airplane and he was traveling around. So they sort of raided Trump's house. Then they went right next door. They got Scott Perry's cell phone and they gave it back to him. But he is there. He's prognosticating, tyranny is coming. So just get ready for it. Now, as we're watching Donald Trump and all the developments here, we're also asking ourselves, what are some of the other potential GOP primary candidates doing? Because Donald Trump hasn't announced he's running yet. And there's a lot of other people out there on the field who sort of seem like they're jockeying for position or that they're at least waiting to see what Trump does or what the outcome of his decision will be or how this indictment process unfolds or whatever. And one of those people is Mike Pence, right? He seems, at least, in my opinion, to be clearly running, right? Unless something sort of deviates him from the path. But he's walking a very fine line where he is trying not to alienate the Trump base while also, he wants to sort of take credit for some of the Trump-Pence policies while not aligning himself with Trump and the J6 stuff. And so I know he's like at 1%, 2% in the polls, but I think he really, could be sort of a formidable threat to Trump if he decides to cooperate with the J6 committee and sort of, try to make that separation happen, keep the good Trump policies, ditch the bad Trump baggage, so to speak. And so he's out and, he's sort of weighing in on all this now. He's saying my Republican friends out there who are saying defund the FBI, people like me who are making fun of them for arresting people for having Lego sets in their, the Capitol building Lego sets, ridiculous. Right, saying it's turned into this agency that has become hyper partisan and that is really only being used for political purposes. But Pence says, don't defund the FBI. He's taking that more traditional conservative approach, sort of it's the same thing as defund the police. And so we'll unpack all of that. But this is the real clip that's catching a lot of attention today. This is Mike Pence, and he is saying that, if the J6 committee, if Liz Cheney, outgoing, really does want to talk to me, I'd consider it, in fact. Right? You got a quote from him. He's speaking in front of St. Anselm or whatever that is, New England College of whatever, and says, I might actually be interested in talking to the J6 committee. And so that's certainly news to us. And so we've got that. And then in our final segment, man, America just keeps paying and paying and paying. Joe Biden just keeps, I don't know what he's doing, but apparently we're going to have less inflation now because we have an Inflation Reduction Act that was passed. Now, this is one of those stories that's just kind of amazing because it's sort of like they're lying directly to our faces almost. That they say it's an Inflation Reduction Act. And as we're going to see, Wharton, the business school, we're going to look at a study from them. They say, it actually reduces the inflation to zero, negligible, doesn't even count, really. They are doing a sort of what do they call it? A meta-analysis of a bunch of different studies, and they say it's basically negligible. So CNN took issue with that, and they're asking the Biden administration about this, and so we'll check in with them. She sort of says, if it doesn't reduce inflation, how can you call it an Inflation Reduction Act? Huh? And I went, whoa, that's a spicy question from CNN. Maybe they are making some changes over there. We'll have to see. We know Toobin's out there doing his Toobin thing somewhere else now. But we know that during this signing, something very interesting happened. Joe Biden, I'm pretty sure he just is like beyond gone. So Forbes, they posted this video clip of him and they cut it off like right at this most convenient moment. They play this clip of him signing. He comes out, he says like two things. He sits down and he signs it. And then as we're going to watch later in our final segment, all these people around him start clapping, right? They're just like clapping. Yay, Joe did something. Oh, and they're all clapping like seals. And Joe Biden is just like, he's like shocked. He doesn't even know where the hell he is. He's totally checked out. And it's just kind of a shocking thing. Now, Forbes, cut that off. And then Joe Biden, if you actually watch the full clip, but it's kind of embarrassing. And it reminded me of the Easter Bunny saga. Remember, we already covered this. Like Joe Biden, when he gets shocked, when he gets surprised, when there's loud noises that are around him, it really becomes shocking to him. And this was the Easter Bunny scene when the Easter Bunny was trying to move him away from talking to the crowd. So those are Easter Bunny ears, right? That's his petrified face that we saw. I mean, he's just sort of shocked anytime there's loud noises or distractions. So we're going to go through all of that. And, we've just got a lot to get to. And so I'm so grateful that you're here. If you want to be a part of the program, my friends, well, then you can head on over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We've got an awesome community of people over there. Let's see who's chatting away. John McGarvey's in the house. Jumpin' Jeff is here. Jason on Blast from California. Tweak is here. Let's see who else. I saw Vientikis over there. There's JC the Music Man. News Now Wyoming is here. That's 2 days in a row, News Now. Zach Nichols. And I think Zach was sharing some pictures of cars that he's working on over there. And so we're grateful for everybody over on Locals. Shout out to my Rumble friends over at Cat Crap Fever. Hello, Cat Crap Fever. We've got MASH24, Sedona Rocks, Candy Gas, Ass Zero is there. And Vientikis. Hello, everybody. And over on YouTube, shout out to our members. Just Cause is here. Mads. Holy F, my S stinks is here. D Boley, 1950 is in the house. Shout out to Lean, modding down the fort along with Just Cause. Shane Sousa, Ronnie Cole. And hey, I hear Zulu's back. Ronnie Cole says Zulu's back in the house. So shout out to Zulu. Zulu's back here. It's good to have Zulu in the house. E Pants, Adam. Hello, Adam. Pam Shelton, Sappy Biden. I'm Joe Biden's son. Is here. Jay Loaiza is here along with Lean and Rob and others. And so thank you for joining, my friends. You can join, click that join button, subscribe if you haven't already. Don't forget our law firm, the R&R Law Group. We are so passionate about helping good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope in the state of Arizona. And so if you happen to know anybody in the state of Arizona charged with a crime, that's literally what we do, all we do. 480-787-0394. For a free case evaluation. Grab a copy of my book, come into the office, and meet our amazing team. All right, and so now we've got to just get right to it, don't we? And we're going to start off with Liz Cheney. Outgoing Representative Liz Cheney lost her primary. Oh, don't you just hate it? Not really. She's been one of the worst Congress people that we've talked about here on this channel, and she's not going to be in Congress anymore. And that's a good victory for America. And so shout out to our friends in Wyoming for making a good call. Liz Cheney, you're fired, is what Donald Trump would have said. And we are going to take a look at Trump's reaction because he is on Truth Social doing a victory lap, as is rightfully due. Liz Cheney has been a massive thorn in his side for quite a long time as the head leader, essentially, right? Benny Thompson is really the chairman of the January 6th committee. But Liz Cheney, as the vice chair, she's kind of running things, right? She's really sort of the person who is leading the charge against the former president. And so now she's not going to be in Congress anymore come next year. So what's going to happen to the January 6th committee? We don't know, but we are going to unpack the election. And it wasn't just one of these elections that was sort of a close call. She kind of eked on a loss, or Harriet Hagerman kind of eked on a victory. No, it was a demolishment, catastrophic. It was 37 points. And there's been a lot of people who've gone through the history and the elections, and some people are saying this is like the fourth or fifth worst loss by an incumbent in American history. Like, it's a blowout. 37 points, right? That's like not just like you lost. That's like people are throwing you out aggressively. They are angry. You've lost basically everything. And this is important because we have to ask ourselves, right, Liz Cheney, if she's going to be promising to run against Trump in 2024, or at least primary him, and then after the primary, right, she loses, run as an independent to potentially siphon off some votes from him, we have to ask ourselves, is she going to bring anybody off? Is she going to siphon anybody off of the Trump base, or any moderates? If you put a group of moderates up against a Joe Biden, you say you've got a Liz Cheney, a Donald Trump, and a Joe Biden, or a Gavin Newsom, or whomever, right? The question becomes, does Cheney siphon up enough from Trump to cause a spoliation and a victory for whoever the oppositional candidate is? We don't know, but a political scientist would say she's got to have a base in order to do that, right? She's got to have sort of like a Ron Paul following, or she's got to have like a Dennis Kucinich following, or a Bernie Sanders following, in order to be effective, just like Ross Perot and others. And does she have that? It's hard to see how that can happen when this is what the vote looks like. Harriet Hageman up 66.3% to Liz Cheney's 28.9%. So it's just like a blowout, right? Not even close. And this was something that they were trying to sort of squeeze on by really bringing in a bunch of Democrats to switch over and to go vote for Liz. Say you're a Democrat, become a Republican, go vote for her, and that way we can stay in power. Now, there was sort of a collective mourning last night as people were recognizing their future was evaporating. Oh, Liz Cheney, she's going to save America. She's the only one holding Trump accountable, and a bunch of weirdos out there. But, they were doing that all late last night, and I saw something very interesting about Elon Musk. And you say, what? Elon Musk, what is he doing on this channel? We don't talk a lot about him often. I mean, we talked about him with Twitter and stuff like that, but not in a Wyoming election, right? It seems sort of like out of place for some reason. But there's a very interesting story. And in fact, this came over from Bloomberg saying that Elon might have actually been involved in some of this stuff. And so here they write, it says from Bloomberg, Musk was among guests as McCarthy raises money on Cheney's home turf. Whoa! House GOP leader is supporting Cheney and Cheney's opponents in Tuesday's primary. McCarthy said he's confident that Hageman will defeat Cheney, and of course she did. But this was interesting, right? And this got published yesterday. Elon Musk is among the guests at a Wyoming event hosted by Kevin McCarthy, the same day that Liz Cheney lost her election. Elon's in Wyoming raising funds. McCarthy refused to confirm or deny Musk's attendance, says, I'm not going to talk about that. Leave me alone. He said in a telephone interview from his hotel room in Teton Village, Wyoming, which is exactly where I was just like 2 weeks ago. They didn't tell me they were going to still be there. Otherwise, I would have stuck around. Tesla didn't also respond for requests for comment. The event is for members and donors and candidates, McCarthy said. Musk, whose SpaceX operations is based in Bakersfield, made significant contributions, some to PACs connected to McCarthy. The resort at Teton Village is not far from Cheney's home, another illustration of how much of a pariah the state's lone House representative has become. And of course, Elon didn't confirm anything about it either. But, it's an interesting question because we're seeing some of the tech bros get involved in some of the election stuff, right? What is Peter Thiel doing? Well, he's supporting Blake Masters. He's supporting Vance, right? He's supporting all of these additional candidates. And Peter Thiel is bros with Elon. And so now you've got some pretty hefty billionaires who are getting involved in the political field. And it seems like they're on the side of the Republicans, which is not a bad thing. Now, Liz Cheney, after her catastrophic, just horrendous failure of a loss, I mean, she should feel bad about it. But Liz Cheney came out and she had some very interesting things to say about it. In fact, she said that, hey, by the way, did you know Abraham Lincoln ran for office and he lost elections? And guess what? He saved America. And guess what just happened to me? Liz said, I just lost an election. And you know what happened after Abraham lost his election? Saved America. So you can just figure it out yourself, what I'm about to do next.
The great and original champion of our party, Abraham Lincoln, was defeated in elections for the Senate and the House before he won the most important election of all. Lincoln ultimately prevailed, he saved our Union, and he defined our obligation as Americans for all of history. Speaking at Gettysburg of the great task remaining before us, Lincoln said that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from this earth. As we meet here tonight, that remains our greatest and most important task. Most of world history is a story of violent conflict, of servitude and suffering.
Okay, so, she's definitely comparing herself to Lincoln, right there. Right? That first sentence. Lincoln lost a House and a Senate seat before he saved America. She just lost her House seat. She's going to save America. Okay, so you might say, a lot of people quote Lincoln in speeches and, they sort of go back. Lincoln saved America. I saved the Union, all this stuff. It's kind of a it's just sort of a tried thing that happens in American politics. Everybody, it's like Lincoln and Washington and all this stuff. So you go, okay, Liz Cheney, she can't be like that delusional, right? Like there's no way she's that much of a deluded person. She has to be somewhat connected to reality, right? Like there's no actual way she's comparing herself to Abraham Lincoln or prognosticating that the challenge she faces is the same challenge that Abraham Lincoln was facing. Is she implying that? I don't know. So I don't think so, right? You might say, no, there's no way she's that deluded. She's got to not think that she's like, her ego can't be that massive, right? Well, here's another one. This is where she's talking about now Ulysses S. Grant. And just for context, okay, she's leading this fake January 6th committee that's not even a legally constituted committee, in my opinion. And I still haven't seen a formal ruling as to how you can have 9 members when the body is supposed to have 13. I don't know how that works because it says shall have 13. They don't. They've got 9. Supposed to be 5 Republicans. They don't. She has 2 on there. So it's not even legitimate. But that's what she's on, right? She's prosecuting her political enemies. She's comparing herself to Abraham Lincoln, who is somebody who had, a whole sort of slew of trials and tribulations, grew up on the frontier, actually led through the Lincoln-Douglas debates, had an adversarial conversation many times with opponents, was a practicing lawyer for, over a decade, right? A whole slew of actual conflicts that he was sort of leading people through. She's on a fake committee that doesn't even have an opposing counsel or even opposing witnesses or even opposing congresspeople asking adversarial questions in any context. So she compares herself to Lincoln, right? How many people died in the Civil War? Hundreds of thousands. Okay. It was a conflict of catastrophic proportions. And what happened, what did the Proud Boys get indicted for? What was the assault from one of them? Throwing a water bottle at a law enforcement officer. It's still on the mind map. You can go to j6mindmap.com. He got indicted for violently assaulting a police officer by throwing a water bottle at him. So Liz Cheney is sort of, I personally think it's a little bit different. Like a water bottle assault, a Capitol Hill police officer shooting Ashley Babbitt, some bruises and injuries for police officers, and a water bottle. Yeah. All right. So you can see how that's just a little bit diluted, right? It has to be diluted because there's no way she can possibly think that. But then here comes another one. This is now, it's not Abraham Lincoln. It is Ulysses S. Grant. Who was he? Oh, well, he was the general for the Northern Army for America, right? Against the Confederate States of America. We talked about this on our morning walk and talk for members and local supporters. The idea that Trump is a bigger threat to America than Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederacy, or than Robert E. Lee, the general of the Confederacy, is insane. And that's what her dad said. And now she's going to compare herself to Ulysses S. Grant. Here she is. She's nuts.
And purpose. In May of 1864, after years of war and a string of reluctant Union generals, Ulysses S. Grant met General Lee's forces at the Battle of the Wilderness. In 2 days of heavy fighting, the Union suffered over 17,000 casualties.
Yeah, that's a real
At the
battle.
end of that battle, General Grant faced a choice. Most assumed he would do what previous Union generals had done and retreat. On the evening of May 7th, Grant began to move. As the fires of the battle still smoldered, Grant rode to the head of the column. He rode to the intersection of Brock Road and Orange Plank Road. And there, as the men of his army watched and waited, instead of turning north back towards Washington and safety, Grant turned his horse south toward Richmond and the heart of Lee's army. Refusing to retreat, he pressed on to victory. Lincoln and Grant and all who fought in our nation's tragic Civil War, including my own great-great-grandfathers, saved our Union.
Oh, great.
Their courage saved freedom. And if we listen closely, they are speaking to us down the generations.
Yeah.
We must not idly squander what so many have fought and died for. America has meant so much to so many because we are the best hope of freedom on earth. Last week in Laramie, a gentleman came up to me with tears in his eyes. I'm not an American, he said, but my children.
All right, so she's going to go lead America because she's like Ulysses S. Grant and Abraham Lincoln. And her great-great-great-granddaddy, first of all, I want to know what side he was on, what was going on with that one. But, Liz Cheney is now going to save America with heroic leadership, just like Abraham Lincoln. Okay, so, right, it's delusion. Honestly, I don't know how else to say it. Or she's joking, right? Or she must be sort of playing a part or a character. Like, somebody needs to tell her, like, enough already. Like, what are you doing? Can somebody just tap her on the shoulder or just kind of nudge her? Right, you're done now. Kind of step aside. Like, we've heard enough out of you. Because this is crazy. She just said by her own statement there were 17,000 people killed in the battle. And she's her whole life is about January 6th. All right, so she'll have to just keep, I guess, we'll see how it works out for her. Now, Donald Trump is very excited about this, as he should be. A lot of fun going on over on his True Social account. So let's cue some of this up because he's always dropping some good truths, and he's been on one. Now, let's get this queued up because he has been posting a lot today. And yesterday, we left off on Truth with Trump saying that the judge on the case should recuse, talking about the judge on his warrant case should be thrown out because of the conflict that he had when Trump was suing Hillary. But then after the election, and actually we talked about this earlier, he said in the raid of Mar-a-Lago, the FBI demanded that all security cameras be turned off. What is that all about? Huh? Says, we said no, says Trump. We said no. Like, why did you want to turn that camera off? Well, says no. Then he said, before the election took place, he said, if Liz Cheney loses tonight, the fake news media will do everything within their power to play it down and pretend that it was not a referendum on the unselects, that it was no big deal. Actually, it would be a very big deal, one of the biggest. And it was, in fact, true. She did lose. Now, while the election was going on, we learned from Trump, he said, the DOJ and the FBI just returned my passports. Thank you! Exclamation point. Whew! Unfortunately, when they raided my home, Mar-a-Lago, 8 days ago, they just opened their arms and grabbed everything in sight, much as a common criminal would do. This shouldn't happen in America. And he's right. Yeah, you shouldn't have FBI agents who are just going in there with boxes and just rounding everything up on your desk. This is all mine now. Right? Were those passports authorized on the inventory list? Did anybody see why they should have those passports? Was there national security information in there? I don't know. Maybe there was. But don't they have to establish a basis, a predicate for that? And they haven't done that. Or if they have, they haven't communicated it to us. And they just returned the passports. Donald Trump says, thank you. What a nice guy. Even polite after his passports are robbed out of his home. Trump continues, and after the election takes place, here he is on Truth. He says, congratulations to Harriet Hageman on her great and very decisive win in Wyoming. This is a wonderful result for America and a complete rebuke of the unselect committee of political hacks and thugs. Liz Cheney should be ashamed of herself, the way she acted, and her spiteful, sanctimonious words and actions towards others. Now she can finally disappear into the depths of political oblivion where, I am sure, she will be much happier than she is right now. Thank you, Wyoming. And as I said at the start of the show, thank you, Wyoming, and cheers to Wyoming and to Donald Trump. Saying thank you to Wyoming and our friends in Wyoming. And Trump continues. He said, look, Liz Cheney's uninspiring concession speech in front of a tiny crowd in the great state of Wyoming focused on her belief that the 2020 presidential election was not, despite massive things, he says, it was not that it's not even, he says all sorts of stuff here. But then he says, Liz Cheney is a fool who played right into the hands of those who wanted to destroy our country. He says, I assumed that with the very big Liz Cheney loss, far bigger than had ever been anticipated, the J6 Committee of Political Hacks and Thugs will quickly begin the beautiful process of dissolution. Is the J6 Committee going to dissolve itself? There was a referendum on the never-ending witch hunt. Says the people have spoken. Trump continues. He says, the fake news media is claiming that Liz Cheney has such a, quote, wonderful and bright political future. Maybe they didn't notice that she lost by nearly 40 points. She's too angry and sick to succeed in the future, but who knows? He puts exclamation points at the end of it. Maybe they didn't know that she lost by nearly 40 points. She's too angry and sick to succeed in the future, but who knows? Maybe she's got a shot. I don't know. Trump continues. Now he's posting, a bunch of stuff here. He says, Ted Cruz says Trump announcing 2024 would clear the GOP field. Probably true. He says the New York Times columnist David Brooks fears that FBI raid is going to reelect Donald Trump. Trump knows it. We have one that he posted here. He says an opinion piece from the Wall Street Journal. This is what Trump posted. He said, the payback for Mar-a-Lago will be brutal. What went around Monday will come around hard for the Democrats when Republicans control the Justice Department and the FBI. He posts this one, the Fascist Bureau of Investigation from American Spectator. He's got here Baltimore Sun. And so now he goes through and now he's sort of endorsing a bunch of people. Here he says for Mitt Romney was participating in a fundraiser for Liz Cheney. And Trump says that didn't work out too well, did it? Old Mitt Romney, not too useful. Here, Trump and the National Guard, he's posting some truth about that, and he appointed some judge. And then I think he gets into a bunch more sort of endorsements. And we got lawyer. He's endorsing a lawyer, Dan Goldman. Shout out to Dan Goldman, New York 10. He's saying he's going to be very compassionate. Also votes for Carolyn Maloney, New York 12. On the other hand, he says Jerry Nadler is likewise a hard-driving man. What is this? He's not talking about the diaper Jerry Nadler, is he? Are there two Jerry Nadlers? I don't know. He says the fake news media continues to push crazy Liz Cheney and the fact that despite losing Wyoming and her congressional race to a far superior candidate by an unprecedented 40 points, she has a bright political future. Really? I don't think so. But perhaps that's why we call it fake news. And that's the update over from Trump reacting to Liz Cheney and her just crushing, devastating defeat in her Wyoming primary. Now, you'd think after sort of a defeat like that, you might go into your fortress of solitude and reflect, journal, engage in, self-reflection of whatever Liz Cheney does, human sacrifices or whatever the Cheney family does. I'm not sure what they're into. But no, that's not what they're talking about. They're already using this as a springboard for 2024 because they're going to do whatever they can to stop Donald Trump from running and winning. And here is Liz Cheney on with NBC News after her crushing loss.
The former president said last night, you're now headed to political oblivion. You said this fight is just beginning. You've even launched a political organization already. So let's just be straight about it. Are you considering running for president yourself?
Well, what I'm going to do, Savannah, is spend the next several months completing my work in Congress, obviously completing my work representing the people of Wyoming. We have a tremendous amount of work left to do on the January 6th committee. And also, though, I'm going to be making sure that people all around this country understand the stakes of what we're facing, understand the extent to which we've now got one major political party, my party, which has really become a cult of personality. And we've got to get this party back to a place where we're embracing the values and the principles on which it was founded. And talking about, fundamental issues of civics, fundamental issues of what does it mean to be a constitutional republic.
But Congresswoman, you didn't answer me yes or no.
It takes to keep Donald Trump. I will be doing whatever it takes to keep Donald Trump out of the Oval Office.
Well, I know you didn't say yes or no, and that's fine if you're thinking about it. But are you thinking about it? Are you thinking about running for president?
That's a decision that I'm going to make in the coming months, Savannah. I'm not going to make any announcements here this morning, but it is something that I'm thinking about, and I'll make a decision in the coming months.
All right, so here's what's going to happen, right? So
about fundamental issues of civics, fundamental issues of what does it mean to be a constitutional
I'm going to do whatever
republic.
it takes.
But Congresswoman, you didn't answer me yes or no.
It takes to keep Donald Trump. I will be doing whatever it takes to keep Donald Trump out of the Oval Office.
Well, I know.
Yeah, so if Donald Trump runs, right, then she may want to go in there and spoil the entire saga, right? She may want to actually join in the primary, see if something happens, see if Donald Trump gets indicted or arrested or, flees over to go pal around with Kim Jong-un or whatever they think is going to happen. And, she can squeeze into victory in some deluded, bizarro world. Who knows? Or if not, right, she actually goes and runs as an independent. But as we talked about at the start of the segment, does she have a base? Does she have anybody who would follow her, who she would actually peel off from Trump and bring over? I don't see it. I don't believe it at all. So she is, I think, still living in fantasy land. And after her crushing, just really embarrassing defeat, Twitter went pretty hog wild with some of the memes. And so, we might as well just spend a quick minute. I mean, they're right here, since they're open, since they're already open, we might as well look at a couple of them. And if you'd like to poke around on your own, well, I'm going to copy the link and drop the link in all of the various chats. And so you're free to poke around, and certainly give Benny Thompson a follow so that you can follow around if you'd like at home. But here's just a couple of them. Here's the first one. Oh, yeah. And I called this one Liz Lincoln. I thought this one was excellent. This one came in from Seoul. Liz Lincoln Cheney. I thought it was sort of Liz Lincoln. No? That's not bad. I think this one was pretty good. This one came in from, what's his name? Costner? Kevin? Is that his name? I'm for Liz Cheney. And then he disappears and he comes back with a changed shirt. This one, outstanding. We've got Joe Rogan having a conversation with Liz. Yeah, it was a great fight. Looked like you might have had him in the first, but what went wrong? What happened here? Liz Cheney meeting with Joe Rogan. We've got, let's see if there's some other ones. That's a good one. That was a good one. And yeah, so there's just a lot out there. And I dropped the entire link. If you'd like to follow along, of course, I would encourage you to go check some more of those out. Let's see if here's another one. As we're scrolling down, got to make sure some of these are, YouTube friendly. But there was a lot more. You can go and check some of that stuff out on Benny Thompson. But Liz Cheney is now gone with the wind, just like the guy who was endorsing her. And we're not going to see her in Congress anytime soon, losing to Harriet Hageman by 37 points. Now, she's still going to be around and in Congress, sort of hosting the January 6th committee saga. And so we will continue to follow that as it unfolds. And we hope you are subscribed before you jump into the next video on this channel. And I look forward to seeing you there. All right. And so we've got another segment from Donald Trump here. And, the raid on Mar-a-Lago, more evidence continues to just come out. After the FBI raided Donald Trump's home in Mar-a-Lago, we're learning more. We now know that the Trump family, got to watch the surveillance footage that actually was recorded during the raid. And so they're going to tell us a little bit more about what they learned. And today we're going to see that, as well as check in with Eric Trump, who says that they may, in fact, release that footage at some point in time. And so this little detail came over from the Epoch Times. And here's what they tell us. They say, Eric Trump says the FBI will release the tape at the right time. Former President Trump, his son, revealed that they did have the tapes. Sean Hannity asked him about it last night. We're going to watch that clip in a minute. But in an interview with the Daily Mail last week, Eric said that the lawyers were told by the FBI agents to turn off the security cameras at Mar-a-Lago. They didn't, and a lawyer for Trump, Alina Alba, later revealed the president and the family watched the FBI raid via CCTV cameras last week. Okay, and so when I read that, I was sort of reading this as they watched it in real time. Right? Remember, Trump wasn't there, and it sounds like most of the family wasn't there. I think Eric Trump was there, and the lawyers came skidding in there as soon as they got the phone call. FBI's here. Do you know about this? No. So then it seems like, right, Trump and the family, they're all sort of watching this in real time. Alina said the president and the family watched the FBI raid via CCTV cameras. Another lawyer, Christina Bobb, told Real America's Voice last week surveillance cameras were turned off for a short period of time while the FBI agents spoke with former president's lawyers. However, she said the family saw the whole thing, referring to the raid. Bob recalled that to the outlet that she was stuck in a parking lot. There was no there to collect paper and to answer questions. So we don't know exactly sort of what was on or off, right? It sounds like it may have been on, then off when the FBI was talking to the lawyers. Trump wrote on Truth, he said, the FBI and others from the federal government would not let anyone, including my lawyers, be anywhere near the areas that were being rummaged through and otherwise looked at during the raid. Right. And this was something that we actually had concerns about. Rand Paul, a senator, also had concerns about this. He was joined by Ron Johnson. Both of them said that they thought that maybe the FBI might be planting or jeopardizing the investigation. Right. You have this thing called a chain of custody. And if you have bad actors in the chain of custody, the entire chain is invalid because they could have jeopardized the evidence on the way from the beginning to the end of the chain. And if the FBI is saying, we found a bunch of illegal stuff and nobody trusts the FBI, then all of that stuff they're claiming is irrelevant in most people's minds. Following the raid, DOJ and the FBI have remained tight-lipped about why the agents searched Mar-a-Lago and what they were investigating. 3 days after the raid, Garland told a news conference that he personally signed off on the raid. Now, Eric Trump did say that they have this on Sean Hannity and he was going to be releasing it at the right time. This is what it sounded like, kind of a rough clip. There's a little bit of an audio delay here. So you're going to hear, this is Hannity and this is Eric Trump talking about that footage after the family apparently watched the whole thing.
Now, Donald Trump did for him.
We're
90 days out, Sean, from the midterms. Yeah. It's not surprising. This timing is not surprising, and it's backfiring on these people.
Will you still have the surveillance tape? Is that correct? Are you allowed to share that with the country?
Absolutely, Sean, at the right time. And your body cam point was spot on. That's why cops wear body cams. They don't tell you to turn off cameras. They want transparency, and that's not what happened here.
And you know for a fact they asked for the cameras to be turned off.
They asked for the cameras to be turned off.
Oh!
Wow. All right.
Very, very sneaky.
Unbelievable time.
Yeah. Now, so why would that be? They're going to say, well, it's national security. Oh, it's national security. Espionage. And we don't want anybody to see anything. And you can't have your security agents who are there in the security room watching the monitors, watching our FBI agents, doing what FBI agents do because of our investigation, right? And that's all it's going to be. And this is sort of the back and forth that happens. Trump's going to say all of these were constitutional violations. They're all going to say that these are just sort of standard investigatory techniques that they have to do and utilize. And they're both essentially going to be sort of right? And as we've made the point before, Trump is better suited in the political realm, in the court of public opinion, to go and win that battle. He has several different tools that the DOJ just doesn't have. One is volume. He can post on True Social all day. Merrick Garland, it takes him like 3 weeks to, decide what to have for lunch. So Trump is just going, A/B testing all sorts of different messaging, calling it a heist, a hoax, a theft, a robbery, an invasion, and the list goes on and on. And now they're going to be able to use that to their benefit. And, it really does make Trump look like the victim that he has claimed to have been, right? And in my opinion, that's been a justified claim. Now, many people in the middle may have not bought into that, but now they're seeing it. And I think that is pushing people over to his side because people do not want this to happen to them. Here is Scott Perry, who is making that warning to America. He's saying, this type of tyranny is very likely coming into your living room. He was on with Fox News, and this was the representative that had his phone seized. I think it was the day after the raid took place on Trump, right? They went after Trump. They turned right around. They went after this representative, and they seized his phone. He ended up getting it back, and they, haven't indicted him or done anything with it. So he's also left in the dark. Another one of Biden's political enemies is now under criminal investigation, had his personal property seized, and he's warning this is going to be coming to the rest of America. So here it comes.
Sits on the House Foreign Affairs Committee and is also the chairman of the House Freedom Caucus. Congressman, it's great to have you this morning. Thanks very much for being here.
Well, thank you so much, Maria. Last week, a day after the raid on the president's home, FBI agents showed up when I was traveling with my family, my wife and our two small children, my in-laws, extended family, showed up and demanded my cell phone. They said they were going to image it. They were not going to search it. And then they eventually did return it. But, Maria, what I think this is about is intimidating anyone who refuses to bend the knee to the narrative. And I don't know exactly what your questions are going to be, but there's been no accountability. James Comey, the director of the FBI, used classified information improperly to get a second special counsel. no accountability for that. The chairman of the Intel Committee changed the president's speech and entered it into the record, created an impeachment trial. Again, no accountability. You name it across the board, whether it's John Eastman, whether it's Scott Perry, whether it's President Trump, and with passing a bill that will pay for hiring of 87,000 IRS agents, tyranny is going to come right into everyone's living room very, very shortly.
Tyranny is coming into everybody's living room very, very shortly. They've got 87,000 new agents who are going to be now in charge of making sure that happens. And we are going to get to that in our final segment when Dementia Joe Biden tries to sign the bill. We also have, before we wrap this one up, Mike Pence is also now responding to the invasion of Trump's home at Mar-a-Lago. And Pence is now sort of joining the middle road of the Republican Party, saying, don't defund the FBI, support the FBI. A lot of individuals, kind of people like Mitch McConnell and Dan Crenshaw out of Texas. How dare you castigate the FBI agents? They're going after white supremacists, and so they have the right to do whatever they want. Here is Mike Pence now saying, well, kind of hold your horses on the defund stuff. We don't need to toss the FBI right in the dumpster. And then Pence has an interesting thing to say about the January 6th committee. Let's see what that is. Here is Mike Pence when he was speaking at the St. Anselm College out of New Hampshire, the Institute of Politics.
Earlier today and elsewhere, I also want to remind my fellow Republicans.
Remind us.
We can hold the Attorney General accountable for the decision that he made without attacking the rank and file law enforcement personnel at the FBI. The Republican Party is the party of law and order. Our party stands with the men and women who serve on the thin blue line at the federal and state and local level. And these attacks on the FBI must stop.
Right, drawing that separation between him and Trump. Trump's going to come out and go the opposite direction on this. Trump's going to say FBI is corrupt, and I think he's right. And we have Pence who's going to pick that other side. So Pence is going to try to differentiate himself from Trump without alienating himself from Trump's base, or Trump's base from him, rather. Let's see how he continues.
Calls to defund the FBI are just as wrong as calls to defund the police.
Which is pointing out to a whole bunch of Republicans, right? A lot of Republicans are saying FBI's got to go.
The truth of the matter is, we need to get to the bottom of what happened. We need to let the facts play out. But more than anything else, the American people need to be reassured in the integrity of our justice system.
How do you do that?
And the very appearance of a recurrence of politics playing a role in decisions at the Justice Department demands transparency as never before. And I will continue to call on the Attorney General and the Justice Department to make that information available to the American people, and do so now.
So I guess that delayed applause on that one. Applause came in kind of late on that one. So I think he was talking about the affidavit, right? Release the affidavit so that we can see that this is not a political hit job, right? That there is some legitimate basis for invading the president's home, which has never happened before. And Hillary Clinton deleted thousands of emails with a cloth. So maybe Trump should have just burned the boxes, and that would have been the proper way to dispose of classified material. She didn't have any of that, right? And it's equal justice, my friends, equal protection of the law. So I think he's talking about the affidavit. And as I've said here before, Trump retains the presumption of innocence, and the government maintains the burden of proof. If they're going to tell us that there's criminality here in an unprecedented fashion, they've got to be the ones to justify it. It's their burden. It's not ours. It's not the defense. And they're not proving it. They're saying, in fact, we don't have to do that because we're the DOJ and we've got ethical obligations and we can just stand behind those. Just like we do for crackhead Hunter Biden. It's not the same thing. This is the president's number one political enemy, and in fact, really could very likely be the next president of the United States. So it feels very political, and if it feels like a conflict, then they've got an obligation, ethically, I would argue, to confirm that it isn't. And I think that supersedes the rest of their obligations, the rest of their ethics. Because what good is the Justice Department if nobody thinks that they enforce justice, if they think that they're a bunch of political hacks, as many of us do? So Pence now, in going through that sort of speech, I think he's sort of splitting hairs on that. He's saying, FBI is great, release the affidavit, and, vote for me. But now he's talking about January 6th. And Mike Pence is, I think he's what's the word? He's mechanical. He's methodical. He's Machiavellian in many ways. He's somebody who will move pieces around and I think sort of set stuff up behind the scene. I think a big part of the reason he joined the Trump campaign was because he wanted to be president, right? And this was just a springboard. I don't know that he's got any real loyalty to Donald Trump. And he's now in a position where he can use his role as the vice president as major leverage, as a major sort of thorn in Trump's side. When he was asked about appearing and cooperating with the J6ers, this is what he said.
On that, January 6th, if they were to call you to committee.
The question being, if the January 6th committee were to call you onto the committee, this guy's asking, but he's not in front of the microphone, making it difficult to hear.
Come and testify, talk. Would you be agreeable?
Well, if there was an invitation to participate, I would consider it. But you've heard me mention the Constitution a few times this morning. Under the Constitution, we have 3 co-equal branches of government. And any invitation to be directed to me, I would have to reflect on the unique role that I was serving in as vice president. It'd be unprecedented in history for a vice president to be summoned to testify on Capitol Hill. But as I said, I don't want to prejudge.
Okay, so he has to think about it. And have they not invited him? It's like they didn't invite him at all. That's pretty interesting. So we didn't see any actual, definitive answer that he would go and show up in front of the committee or not show up in front of the committee. He'd have to consider it. It would be unprecedented to sort of do that. And then, maybe if it serves his political campaign and it deteriorates Donald Trump's, he would do it. But he's got to keep that door open so that he can make that decision later. He's not dumb, right? He knows exactly what he's doing, and he's using that to good effect. And so we also saw that as we check in with the court docket, Donald Trump, this is the search warrant docket. We see some new activity today. And I mentioned this previously, that there was a motion, a consolidated reply of all the media intervenors who want access to the search warrant records. So let's unpack what is happening here. We left off on the Trump warrant docket update, talking about on August 16th, several notices of appeal. We saw this guy. His name was Paul Dorsey. He wanted access to the affidavit. Court said, no, you don't get it. He said, well, I'm not taking that for an answer. So I am appealing this. He did. He sent the appeal over to the Court of Appeals, paid the fee, $505. Appeals are really expensive. It's annoying. And, you just had to pay for it. So he did. Now, we got another person who we talked about. His name is Michael Barth. He also wanted access to the sealed search warrant. And today the judge came out and said, no, I told all of you already. The interests asserted by you, the movement, are adequately represented by the media. And remember, earlier in the week, we talked about all of these media companies just piling in here, right? They're all skidding their cars into the front door of the courts. And here, right, ABC motion to intervene. Dow Jones Company, Inc. We have, the list goes on and on and on. I mean, basically every single media company is in here. Dow Jones, Government Accountability Organization, they're all in here. This list goes on and on. This case is not even old. There's a ton of entries. But now what the judge had said to do is he said, look, all of you media people, I can't deal with all of you independently. So why don't you consolidate all of your responses into one giant motion and I'll look at them all together. And that's what happened. So here they are. Like, take a look at this one. ABC Broadcasting Company, AP Associated Press, Times, Dow Jones, Scripps, NBC Universal, CBS, New York Times, they're all in here. And so they all consolidated their responses and they said, all right, this is what we're saying back to you, Judge. They say, all right, all of the news media companies, ABC, CBS, all of Miami Herald, Washington Post, we filed this omnibus response, and here's what we say, Judge. They say, the government and the media, we agree that the public has a clear and powerful interest in understanding the unprecedented investigation into Trump's handling of classified records. Remember, the government said, we acknowledge that. When the government was making their motion, they fleshed out for us the different sort of balancing factors, the different variables that the court will consider about whether to release documents. They've got, this sort of balancing competing interests. The public has a right to know, and the government sort of has a right to prosecute, right? And the courts have a right to process things. So you got to balance these things out. And the prosecutors said, we know that everybody wants to know what's in here, but we say that the imbalance, that the national security interests outweigh your right to know. And the media is saying, that's great that they agree with us. It's perfect. We agree with them, in fact, that the public does have a clear and powerful interest here. They also agree that the common law right of access applies to the search warrant materials that are currently under seal, right? He's actually referencing their response. He's actually pointing to their document, right? He says, okay, look at page 4 at note 3. Go to their document. They're agreeing with us. Footnote. They further agree, the government prosecutors, that the law required the release of the search warrant and the property receipt, which the court has now done, and that the cover sheets for the search warrant application, the government's motion to seal, and the sealing order should be unsealed immediately, as well as only with some minor redactions. So we agree with all this stuff. And they also agree, which is mostly what we've gotten, they also agree they may be able to make a sufficient showing of a compelling interest to keep this under seal while it remains ongoing. So we agree on all of that stuff, but the media says the government, however, has taken the position that the affidavit of probable cause must remain under seal in its entirety, despite the presumption of access, with little explanation as to how release would harm the ongoing investigation. And we were very critical of this. Remember, it was all national security crap, and it was all, we'll give them a template of criminal prosecutions. And we were mocking it. I think that was on Tuesday. We were saying, yeah, all the other presidents who are having their home potentially raided, they'll learn what the DOJ is doing. Wow. Yeah, this might, alert all of the other presidential criminals being charged under in espionage acts about your investigation. It's ridiculous. It was like a copy and paste motion. But they say, even though many of the details are already public, they're still not telling us exactly how and why this is so bad. In the government's view, the necessary redactions, they say, quote, would be so extensive as to render the document devoid of content that would meaningfully enhance the public's understanding of the events, saying that if we release any of this stuff, it's just going to look like a big black page. Everything's going to be redacted. And so you stupid public, you're not going to learn anything from it anyways. Response at page 10. This runs, or at whatever, however they're referencing it in their document. I think it's on page 10. It was a 13-page document. Yeah. This runs counter to the presumption of public access, meaning we start that the public gets it. This requires the disclosure of as much information as possible. The affidavit of probable cause should be released to the public with only those redactions that are necessary to protect a compelling interest articulated by the government. And they haven't done that yet. They make the argument, they say the public has a clear and powerful interest in the search warrant. Even Attorney General Merrick Garland wrote this when he was the chief judge of the D.C. Circuit Court. They're referencing Judge Garland, who's now the Attorney General. They're saying, this is pretty weird. The DOJ doesn't want to make this public now. But this is a problem. They say there's a case that came out of the D.C. Circuit Court. You can see this here in 2020. There's also another case, see also, called MetLife versus Financial Stability Oversight Council. This was a 2017 case, and Judge Garland was the author of the opinion of the 2017 case. And it sounds like Leopold may be actually referencing that opinion or something. But regardless, this is what the judge said when he was judge. He said, the common law right of public access to judicial records is a fundamental element of the rule of law, important to maintaining the integrity and the legitimacy of an independent judicial branch. At bottom, it reflects the antipathy of a democratic country to the notion of secret law, inaccessible to those who are governed by that law. And they say that in this opinion, he writes, says the right of access serves to produce uninformed and unenlightened public opinion. But the public needs uninformed and enlightened public opinion to safeguard against any attempt to employ our courts as instruments of persecution, and to promote the search for truth, and to assure confidence in judicial remedies, right? Yeah, that all sounds really, it sounds great. Yes, thank you, Judge Garland. We agree with you. Transparency and accountability are important in making sure that you're not turning the DOJ and the courts into political hack jobs. Separately, as the government notes, there is a First Amendment right of access to certain criminal proceedings. 11th Circuit has not considered this specifically about warrant materials. There are other cases within this district, and they're citing a whole litany of them. I'm not going to go through it all. Fast forwarding, it says, consistent with the presumption of access, meaning if we all start at the same baseline, we get access to it. The DOJ, under Attorney General leadership, has joined the media interveners in recognizing the public has a clear and powerful interest in understanding what the heck went on at Trump's residence. They say it weighs heavily in favor of unsealing. Other people have joined. In recognition of that interest, the court acted promptly and diligently to ensure public access to the search warrant and the receipt. In other words, the court has already agreed with us that the public really wants to know about this, and you moved quickly when you showed us that first round of documents. And so now we're saying, since you've already said it's urgent, just carry that over to this one. Just unleash those other documents as well. That same interest extends to the affidavit of probable cause in this matter, which outlines the government's basis for the extraordinary step of seeking the warrant to search a former president's home. Extraordinary step. The unsealed search warrant and property receipt revealed that Trump is under investigation for potentially violating the Espionage Act, mishandling top secret documents, and obstruction of justice. Notice of filing of redacted documents has all of that listed for us. So the media says, look, in these circumstances, it is not merely a recitation of Hornbook law to say that the public has a right to learn as much as possible, as soon as possible, about this historically significant event, including the details, right? What Hornbook law, it's sort of like think of it like an encyclopedia of law, like one of the most boring, useless things that some people use it. I don't use it. Smarter lawyers probably do. But it's something that, it's like, oh, what are you're opening up like the book and you're just saying, oh, here's my law, right? That's not what is happening here. They're saying, this is Trump. This is the former president. We've got midterms in like 90 days. He's going to be running for office again. There's a whole January 6th committee that's been investigating him for 18 months. It's not just law. I mean, I can sit here and recite law to you, Judge. Do you want to see all of the law? But for the love of all that's holy, my friend, look at the reality, right? Look at what's happening on the ground. It says here, notably, the former president has made no objection to the release of the warrant materials, and in fact has gone further than the media interveners, calling for the immediate release of the completely unredacted affidavit on social media. So they're saying Trump wants even more than we do. Trump wants no redactions even on there at all. So he's a party to this. The media is a party to this. We have a presumption of access. Trump wants it released. Release it, Judge. The government has told the court in arguing to keep the affidavit under seal that if it were to release the document, certain unspecified redactions would be necessary to harm the integrity, to prevent harms that would jeopardize the investigation. And while the government characterizes those necessary redactions as, quote, extensive, meaning they're going to black out the entire document, it admits that some portions of the document, if released, would not harm the investigation. Yet the government thus far appears to have made no effort to identify the particular portions of the affidavit that it believes pose a risk and explain the basis for that belief. Instead, asserting the court is already, quote, familiar with the highly sensitive contents and the specific harms that would result from its unsealing. The judge already knows that it's harmful, so they don't need to explain it. So they're having this conversation between them and the judge. so nobody else gets to know. The defense doesn't know. The media doesn't know. It's just them two. And they're saying, yeah, but we have the presumption. And this is a First Amendment issue. And this is a really unprecedented event that's not even remotely comparable to anything we've ever seen before. So we need access to it. And to overcome the presumption of access, right, a legal standard, what is the rule? They write, this court must make findings of fact on the record supporting closure. So you don't get to have that private conversation between you and the prosecutor, right? Judge, you need to tell us why we don't get access to this thing. We have a presumption, and if we don't get it, why? The government has offered little assistance in this regard, given the high level of abstraction in its response. It's just talking nonsense. It's just a litany of a templated language. I say it's nonsense as applied to this case, right? It's not, it's like, okay, it's national security, don't want to templatize your investigations, got it, but that's not necessarily relevant here. The media tells Biden's DOJ, they say, look, Judge, any proposed redactions from this government must be narrow. The government must explain to the court why each redaction is necessary to mitigate harms to the integrity of the investigation. If they're making these claims, why we can't show that paragraph or that paragraph, why? Only those redactions determined to meet a compelling need articulated by the government can be justified as being redacted. And they say here this word in-camera review. That means the judge can go and take a look at it, hear the arguments for the redactions or non-redactions, and make a decision. But they got to go through it case by case. You just can't, or line by line, essentially, redaction by redaction, because every single one of those sentences, we have a right to a presumption of a right of access. The media now requests the opportunity to be heard by the court to challenge any redactions in the affidavit if they're filed. Their next argument, they're saying, Judge, look, there is no compelling interest in the continued sealing of this document, as the government also recognized in its motion, it's got a interest in maintaining secrecy, and that once it becomes public, it loses that information. It diminishes its availability. The government also noted the law requiring the unsealing of the warrant and property receipt were already public, right? They've already released some of this stuff, but there are also things that have been reported. The press already widely reported details about the events. Like, for example, we know some of the materials sought in Mar-a-Lago related to nuclear weapons or special access programs. That came from Maggie Haberman over at the New York Times, right? So all of these leaks are being dripped out. Merrick Garland goes out and gives a press conference, and then the media gets these little drips. Maggie Haberman says that there were nuclear codes there. National Archives said that it got 15 boxes in January. We saw that article that came over from Whitehurst. Some materials recovered by the National Archives were classified. We see that. Some of the recovered materials were torn up and they needed to be taken back together. DOJ launched an investigation, convened a grand jury. They served Trump a subpoena. DOJ officials, including Jay Bratt, met with people from Trump. They met at Mar-a-Lago in June with Trump, right? We've already covered almost all this. During the June meeting, Trump briefly stopped but did not answer any questions. Stopped by, right? He swung by. He said, hey, you're here from the National Archives? Give them what they need. Or remember, he said, let us know how we can help, I think was the quote. Also, during the June visit, the group toured storage facilities at Mar-a-Lago and got some materials there. Covered all that. Like they were already there picking up boxes. Bratt subsequently sent an email to Corcoran saying, can you lock that box up? Lock that room a little bit. Trump's attorney signed a letter stating that all of the materials had been turned over. Trump also said that, sure, we're happy to secure those boxes, and they did. DOJ subpoenaed surveillance footage from Mar-a-Lago, which showed the boxes were moved in and out of storage where the records were kept. So there was access back and forth. And the DOJ interviewed many current and former Trump employees who indicated there may have been classified materials remaining at Mar-a-Lago. To the extent the affidavit of probable cause contains any of this information or other details, there is no compelling interest in maintaining it under seal. Saying if the affidavit has all that stuff in there, we already know it. They've already leaked it out to us. So just release the rest of it. Instead, those portions of the affidavit should be made public even if the court says that there is a compelling interest to maintain that under seal. If we already know about it, just release the whole thing. The government's position that any redactions would make the whole document useless is actually not true, right? They say the public is entitled to review those records unless there is a compelling interest to deny access to it. The public, not the government, should have the opportunity to determine whether the information enhances our understanding of this historic event. It's true. So the media writes, for the foregoing reasons and those set forth in the motions, interveners respectfully request the court unseal any and all records pertaining to the search warrant. If the court determines that the judge wants to look at it for an in-camera review, they say they want those portions to be redacted and the remainder of the records to be unsealed. And look here, we've got all these lawyers, several from Florida, Florida, Philadelphia, and DC. Charles Tobin and others, a lot of lawyers. So ABC here, Palm Beach Post, lawyers signed off on this. NBC, EW Scripps, Associated Press, Cable News, WP Company, CBS over here, New York Times, the list goes on. And that's the response. So now we know that tomorrow there is actually a proceeding taking place where they're going to have oral arguments about this. It is scheduled for Thursday, and we'll know more. The judge is going to issue a ruling on this at some point. And what do you think about it? You think the judge is going to unseal the affidavit? I don't. I think that they're going to buy the national security argument, and they're going to try to make sure that we don't see as much of this as possible, because if they leave it to your imagination, then you can fill in the gaps however which way you want. And if we learn what really the basis was for this, and it turns out to be some overdue library books that Trump had, a lot of people are going to lose even more faith in the DOJ than they already have. And so, of course, we will continue to follow Trump and the Trump saga. I hope you continue to follow us by subscribing to this channel so that you don't miss the next one, and leaving a like before you get out of here. And I look forward to seeing you there. All right. And so we've got one final segment here, my friends, before we wrap it up for the day. And, you know, Joe Biden, I think he's even more gone and confused than maybe we even know. But Joe Biden is now signing the Inflation Reduction Act, which is not even reducing inflation. And so that's our final segment we're going to go through here in a minute. We'll get this one queued up here. Joe Biden just signed the Inflation Reduction Act, and as we're going to learn, doesn't really reduce much inflation. And I'm pretty sure he signed it. I'm not sure he knows what he signed. We are going to take a look at it. Forbes had a very interesting clip of the signing ceremony, and they cut it off right at the moment where Joe Biden starts to kind of like lose it. He's kind of going, oh, what the heck is going on here? And so we are going to actually watch that in this clip. You can kind of see his face a little bit. He's starting to get a little bit, what the heck is going on over here? And there he is. And it reminded me of that old Easter Bunny saga where Joe Biden got shooed away from the press by the Easter Bunny. And so, it's sort of like back-to-back reminders that the president is struggling out there. But this is where Forbes clipped the signing ceremony. Let's watch this. It's about 46 seconds. Joe Biden came out, said a couple of things, historic, whatever. And then he walks over there, sits down at the table, and Forbes stops the clip. We're going to pick it up from there in a minute.
And now I'm going to take action that I've been looking forward to doing for 18 months. I'm going to sign the Inflation Reduction Act.
Okay, so first of all, did you hear the words that came out of his mouth? I'm going to sign the Reduction Act.
I'm going to sign the Inflation Reduction Act.
All right, so here he goes. You got Chuck Schumer there. You got Manchin over there. He's getting a lot of oil money for this deal. Chuck Schumer is really excited about it because he's getting more money. Who knows what he's getting? And I don't know who these other people are. Okay, here he goes. Our vigorous president. Now watch the cut. Here comes the cut.
Here you go. It's now law.
All right, nice cut. Got pretty loud in there. For you headphones users, right? Pretty loud ceremony. Now, Forbes cut that out. But when you watch the rest of Joe Biden, man, he does not look too good here. Now we're going to pick it up. Fox News has the rest of the clip. And watch poor Joe just meandering around here before he hands the signing pen, which is ceremony, over to Joe Manchin over here from West Virginia. Oh my goodness, look at the eyes. Now, I know what you might be thinking. You might be saying, well, that stands out. That's not that big of a deal. But listen, we have covered this for coming on several years now. We had this one. This was the Joe Biden bunny saga. Breitbart put this one together. And here's Joe being shooed away from the media. We had this one clip of the Easter bunny.
Pakistan should not, and Afghanistan should be.
Watch the Easter bunny.
Mr. President.
Okay, so watch the Easter bunny come shoo him away from the media. Get out of here. You're done. Go. Get out of here. Go. Yeah, and that was one of his staffers. Remember that? She was actually in the bunny suit. And look at Joe's face. Here it is. Look at this. He's petrified. He's petrified by this bunny. I actually feel bad at his face. You can see it. And look at this. It just catches him. He's totally shocked and still petrified there. You can see the horror right there. That frame right there is just pure elder abuse. It's just horror right there. And that was Easter, right? And then they shoot him out of there and they go back to your work over there. And so then, Joe Biden is out there again with this face. I just think he's just getting worse as the day goes by. Now, also, he had COVID, and so they were very concerned about some of the COVID protocols in the White House. And so here is Joe Biden walking in with his mask. Now, his wife had COVID, or has COVID. Jill, I think, still has COVID. But Joe has had it like 4 or 5 times now, or whatever it is, twice officially, but who knows. Here is the signing ceremony. He comes in with his mask, and watch what happens right after he takes his mask off. Okay, so a nice cough in the hand. And there's the signing pen over to Joe Manchin. Oh, let's watch that again. Here it is. All right, so there's Manchin now. All right, so a lot of, funny stuff with the president, kind of ridiculous. But the big question that we have, since this is what's called an Inflation Reduction Act, wouldn't it be nice if we got a little reduction in inflation? I don't want inflation, right? I use the same currency that you do, probably. And we have, as you can see, a very, very, sort of reputable school here called Wharton University of Pennsylvania. They did a little analysis for us, and here's what they've got over on their website. And this is, as you can see, this is an EDU website, all right? This is budgetmodel.wharton.upenn.edu, right? So it's not foxnews.com, so, take it for what it's worth. Even though, well, I'll leave it at that. Here's what they tell us. The Inflation Reduction Act, comparing the CBO, which is the Congressional Budget Office, with the PBWM, which is another analysis, and giving us some estimates. Here's what they say. Key points: $248 billion reduction in accumulated deficits. The difference is, let's go back down to the, here it is. Take a look at this bullet point. Under this bill, bullet point 3 says the impact on inflation is statistically indistinguishable from zero for either estimate. You see what that says? The impact on inflation is statistically indistinguishable from zero by either estimate. Yeah. Over the first 5 years, CBO estimates only $21 billion in accumulated deficit reduction. Over the same period, however, payments to liquidity-constrained households exceed deficit reduction. And so, a lot of economics numbers that our eyes will glaze over if we start reading. So we don't need to do all of that. But the point is, they don't, zero, indistinguishable from zero in terms of reductions on inflation. So that means your dollars are not going to get any more valuable. They're going to continue to either deflate or stay the same. Here, the Committee on Responsible Federal Budgets, they gave us a little bit more information on what's actually in here. We've got a lot of money going to climate change. Overall, CBO estimates that there's going to be $485 billion of new spending and tax breaks, and that they're saying that these are going to reduce deficits. You can see billions of dollars, $386 billion, energy and climate. They're saying all this is going to result in savings, but it's costing money, $790 billion total revenue and savings, saying that deficits are going to be adjusted, but ultimately no real impact on inflation. Fiscal impact of the Inflation Reduction Act. in terms of billions. Yeah. And so the Wharton School saying impact really results to zero. And the CNN was catching wind of this, and they had this conversation with somebody who is actually an advisor over at the White House. Here's what they asked her about. They said, we're looking at these studies, these numbers, these Inflation Reduction Act. That sort of implies that it's going to reduce inflation. Is it going to? And here is this non-answer from the White House.
Democrats titled this bill the Inflation Reduction Act, which begs, of course, for voters to hold you all accountable to that. The Congressional Budget Office, you know this, but to remind viewers, the Congressional Budget Office, the nonpartisan kind of scoring organization for legislation, says that the bill would have negligible impact on inflation this year and next. Are you personally comfortable as an economist calling it the Inflation Reduction Act?
So this bill represents really important investments we know we need to make that help to expand our economic capacity.
So
inflation happens when we have too much demand for the supply, and we know we need to be investing in the supply supports so that we are better able as a country to address issues like inflation going forward. So this will increase our economic growth, and because of how we plan to implement it and provisions in the bill, that growth will be more equitably shared.
But if you
equitable growth. Now, here comes the question, the question that just is a whopper from CNN, and I was sort of surprised when I heard this one. Here it is.
Passed a bill called the Fill Every Pothole Act. I mean, voters should expect you to fill every pothole. I mean, so should voters measure the success of this bill on how much you reduce inflation in the next couple of years?
Yeah, and so there's really another non-answer that comes out of that, but it's a good question, right? If you have a Pothole Reduction Act, you're supposed to have less potholes. How is the Inflation Reduction Act going to reduce anything at all? And in fact, we've heard this from many people. In Arizona, we have a senator named Mark Kelly, who apparently was a NASA scientist who, I guess doesn't know a whole lot about weather for some reason. But he said that this Inflation Reduction Act was going to bring Arizona more water and help us with droughts and stuff. And I was asking myself, how much more rainwater are we going to get? Like, what is the return on the investment for our spending? Can anybody answer that? And the answer is no, right? Even by their own numbers, looks like it's going to be a big whopping zero. So Biden, very curious, wondering what the heck he signed. Many Americans are going to be hit with, sort of increased taxes, new IRS agents, and it's going to just be the same sort of litany we've been living under for some period of time. More money, more spending, more climate change initiatives that are probably going to fail. More pork going all over to Democrats. We've got Manchin. I'm sure Arizona's getting something from Kyrsten Sinema. Don't know what that is. But it's going to be, probably just keeping us on the exact same path that we've been on for the last several years. And, we'll see how that works out for them. But we'll continue to cover it, and I hope you follow us and hit that subscribe button before you watch your next video, and I look forward to seeing you there. And that's it for the segments, my friends. We've covered a lot of ground. 3 big ones. Liz Cheney, no longer in Congress. We've got the Trump family watching the FBI raid footage, basically in real time. And we've got Biden wondering what the heck he signed, what bills are going through American Congress. And now it's time to hear from you. And I saw some super chats come in, and we are making sure that we've got our locals comments thread queued up. And I'm checking in over on Rumble and elsewhere to see what we have to attend to from your thoughts and your comments. And we're starting here at the bottom of locals. And there it is. We had some memes in the house too. Jason on Blas says, Robert, of things to come, but just what is coming. It's a harbinger, right? But the word of the day on the thumbnail was harbinger. It's a harbinger. It's a foreshadowing. It's a foreboding. What's coming? Don't know. We're going to have to see. Depends a lot on what they do and how Trump responds, but it's going to be probably juicy. Tesha Michelle says 2022 midterms, the Democrat galley slaves see the USS Donald Trump coming at ramming speed. We got a clip here. Let me pull this one up and see what this is. All right, so I'll probably get a copyright strike, but this is a clip from WB. Okay, so I think that's the Trump army, I guess, is coming over. Let's go back to that comment and see what that one says. See the USS Donald Trump coming at ramming speed from Tessa Michelle. Here's another meme from 3 girlies. Shout out to the youngest girlie. Yeah, coming soon. Liz Cheney on The View. That picture is like actually scary. Like, I don't like how that one looks at all. Hits a little too close to home. It sort of looks like a little too real for my liking. But good to see you. Heather and the three girlies are over in the house. Says Republicans also just threw Liz Cheney right out the door. Democrats and Republicans. Thanks. No longer useful to us. Vientica says Liz Cheney being removed certainly is a move in the right direction, but that is dependent on what we make of it. People talk about a red wave and the end of the neocon era, but I see no reason to expect politicians still being grifters in the end. I'll wait and see if the red wave happens and if it spawns the same old shtick of the media focusing on the forefront issues while passing legislation, still making the security state close in while everyone is distracted. Stay vigilant, people, and keep moving forward. That is from V Enticus. Good to see you, V. Heather says, someone posted this one a while ago. It looks just like her. I love it. I love it. And so Three Girlies says, I got my memes out of the way. Thank you, Three Girlies. And shout out to the youngest girlie in the house over there. Says, Rob, you asked a question earlier if Liz will damage Trump. Nope. No, she won't. Liz will have any effect, probably won't have any effect, even if she ran as an independent. She couldn't win a Republican primary if she dressed in gray, wore a long flag-waving trunk, and was still waving and singing the Star-Spangled Banner. It would be an insult to the elephant to call her one. Even if she goes independent, you have Andrew Yang with his new party. Of course, my favorite, the Libertarian Party. And let's not forget the Green Party and the Constitution Party. All those other parties will be siphoning off votes from the two brands of the same establishment party. She won't make a difference. She thinks she's bigger than she is, and the Democrats are propping her up until they don't need her anymore. Yeah, I mean, she's just a useful idiot, honestly. It's like really what it comes down to. And that's what's so gross about it, is she knows what she's doing. She knows what this is all about. And it is... it is not good. All right, so let's go over to YouTube and take some of these. Thank you for your super chats, my friends. Tara Rayner's over here says, Rob, are property seizure lists normally typed? Do they carry a printer with them? Actually, yeah. I mean, they do. Actually, yeah. Cops have oftentimes printers in their cars. Like you probably get tickets that are typed up oftentimes, right? You actually get a typed ticket. So yeah, they actually have printers in their car. So not a huge surprise that somebody would go back and sort of type it up and then print it out right there. But it's a good question, Tara. Thank you for it. Stephen Klein says Lincoln started a civil war. You know, that is one interpretation of history. There's a lot of people who, you know, think that Lincoln was a tyrant, not because of his view on I think not because those people are pro-slavery, but they're pro states' rights and anti federal government telling states they can't secede, right? It's not a slavery thing. But some people have a different interpretation of Lincoln. Bear Ashby says, Liz and Pence are going to Gitmo. Remember this. We'll see. STFUFFS says, $5 for 37 points day. Thank you, STFFU. Clinton family, Bush family, and Cheney family all knocked out of politics by Trump. If for nothing else, we owe him for that. He did, right? I mean, what happened to the Bushes? Didn't one of the cousins, like the eighth cousin or something, think that they were going to be attorney general out of Texas and didn't work out? Some guy with cancers here says, oh, the poor FBI's reputation is being trashed by their own actions. Oh, the humanity is what he says. I'm with you, some guy with cancer. I think it's kind of silly. FBI. They're being so mean to us. You know, we're threatened. You go, I thought you guys were like hardcore special agents who were like really tough. All right. Good to see you, some guy with cancer. James Jarvis says, Liz's speech moved me to turn off the TV. LGB. Zinger. Thank you, James Jarvis. Very moved. I was very moved too. We have James says, can we start calling Jerry Nadler Jerry Waddler? He does. He waddles all over the place. It's the diaper. It's like a boat anchor. And, you know, it's 35. Could you imagine carrying 35 pounds of excrement in your underpants for how long? I don't know, 35 years. Probably 35 years, 35 pounds of excrement that he's been hauling around. No wonder he's so angry all the time. He's actually not that angry. He's just sort of there, isn't he? Yeah. Alan Mustard is here with no question, but definitely left a super chat. Thank you, Alan. And Tara Rayner says, I know who the informant is now. It's Cassidy Hutchinson. Screenshot, and we'll see. She testified on June 28th. Informant allegedly went to the FBI on the 22nd. That would be just wild. Because she's a bona fide liar, right? We've already covered that. She says, I wrote that note, and the creepy panda lawyer, he wrote the note. And yeah, we know. Yeah, it's kind of, that's an interesting one. What if it was her? And the J6 committee predicated their whole fake committee hearing on Cassidy. And then you have the DOJ also do the same thing. It turns out she's just a liar. I don't know about that one. And so that came in from Tara Rayner. And we also had Paul Minot, who is the authority on chartreuse, says, Rob, when does your MMA training channel start up? You know, nobody would watch it. You want to watch me get my face beat in by a bunch of highly qualified MMA people? I could do that. But you know, it's funny. I was actually thinking about it, and I found two places close to me that actually are open, and one is Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. The other one is I can't remember it, but I was looking at them. There's also a boxing gym right over there, and so I'm actually thinking a lot about it. I went and saw a back doctor today. I have some lower back stuff, and I don't think it is anything that would preclude me from partaking in that beautiful sport. So probably won't be on a separate YouTube channel, but sure, I'll be happy to share some of that here and elsewhere. It's good. It's very good to get humbled from time to time, and MMA will do that instantly. Very, 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 very good. I miss it. It really is. I actually, honestly, Paul, I just threw away, when I was in high school, I had a back injury. I had a pars defect, lower back injury. I had to sit out my junior year. It was a big bummer. But I was actually moving a couple places and things around, and I found my x-rays from that. And I took that to the back doctor this morning, and he was laughing at him. He's like, oh man, these are so old. They're from high school. He said, it looks like it's an old movie from like a 1960s movie or something like that. So we were sort of laughing about it, but it's a common thing. A lot of us, he was telling me, a lot of people have lower back pain just by living. It may not have been necessarily, like my current back pain may not necessarily be a result of that injury, but, basically the recommendation is got to strengthen that core up a little bit. Probably should be doing yoga. Probably should be doing Pilates and all that stuff. But I said, what about mixed martial arts? That strengthens your core. And he said, take it easy, one step at a time. So we're working on that. Former LEO is in the house, and he posted something on Locals that I can't share. Former LEO. I can't share this on YouTube. What is this even referencing? I don't even know what they're talking about. Former LEO. So here the comment is. Here's Vientikister's reply. He says, I was on the bus the other day. I saw this really hot Thai chick. I kept thinking, I'm not even going to read that one. I'm not going to read that one either, V. I don't know if you want me to read that one. So maybe you do. Maybe it's a joke. Maybe I'm missing the joke. I don't know. I don't know what's going on over there. All right. Former LEO shared this one earlier. This was really good. Former LEO sent this one. This is the Harriet Hageman speech. And so this is her fed up speech.
We're fed up with the Green New Deal and the socialists who created it. We're fed up with the attacks on our fossil fuel and energy industries. We're fed up with an open border. We're fed up with human trafficking. We're fed up with fentanyl flooding our country. And we're fed up with illegal immigration.
Good video there. It's 2 minutes. Go check that out over from former LEO, and he posted that earlier on the Locals chat, and I saw that. It's sort of one of those, I think it was from InfoWars. Pretty fun. Pat's the Patriot on Rumble says, according to the act, it says there is no intention to raise taxes on those making less than $400,000. Why did they use the word intended instead of explicitly saying they won't do it? Yeah, I mean, they're going to obviously raise taxes. That's obviously going to happen, right? Payroll taxes and all of these things, those are all going to get passed down to consumers and stuff, right? Taxes get passed down to consumers many times. So I don't think that that's a reality at all. They use words because they know that they're slippery. That's why they use them. Good to see you, Pat's the Patriot, over on Rumble. Appreciate the Rumble rant. On Locals, we got Sergeant Bob says, Lizzie, you are no Abe Lincoln. Benedict Arnold, though, I can buy into that one. Says, we don't need moderate Republicans. We need Republicans with nuts like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren B. New blood to help President Trump drain the swamp. Says, remember, Dickie Cheney ran the G. Bush White House and got us into endless Mideast wars. Lizzie is suffering from delusions of grandeur. That's true. Heather says, so Kinzinger and Liz have nothing to lose now. Does this mean the J6 committee are going to get worse? Desperation really does odd things, and they're now going to get more desperate as time runs out. Yeah, like, what are they going to do? I guess they've got, it's almost September, so they've got probably 4 months that they can just sort of beat up on Trump. C. Reed says, so seems we really need to get a meme channel, Rob. I guess I'll drop this here. Rittenhouse says, my 3 shots were more effective than Fauci's. There was some good Kyle Rittenhouse memeing going on the locals chat. I saw Ryan McGarvey over there. He was saying Harbinger sort of sounded like Harbinger, who was Binger and Lunchbox over from the Kyle Rittenhouse case. Remember Bingy Binger and the judge? Don't get brazen with me! Outstanding. I really missed that trial. And I was still doing a ton of law firm work at the time, so I didn't get to really thoroughly enjoy that one. But it was really enjoyable. Sergeant Bob says, Lizzie is right. We need to preserve our great freedoms. Lizzie, that is why you were primaried out. And Lizzie, do not even think about running as an independent. Who would throw money at you? Okay, maybe the Dems would. They would. Sergeant Bob says, I think if President Trump wins, he's going to reimagine the FBI, scale it down, operate it in a way that they follow the law. I'm running my mouth off, but I can't contain myself. P.S. Miss Lucky and I enjoy the morning walks to start our day. Well, that's just beautiful, Miss Lucky and Sergeant Bob. I'm sure you guys have beautiful walks up there in Chino Valley. Beautiful place. Sergeant Bob says, Lizzie, I hear Jackson Hole is having an election for dog catcher. Go try it. Words Mean Thing says, read the whole Trump post on Jerry Nadler. Let's see. Do I still have that open? Yeah, I was confused on the Jerry Nadler thing. Oh. Yeah. Okay. So I think it's a ... Yeah, that's right. So let's see here. A vote for Karen Maloney in New York 12 is a vote for the future. She is a kind and wonderful person who has always said terrific things about me and will support me no matter what I do, just as I supported her very early on. She begged for a check with no quid pro quo, and I gave it to her. In fact, I gave her many. On the other hand, I gave her many. On the other hand, Jerry Nadler is likewise a hard-driving man of the people, whose energy and attention to detail is unlike anyone else in Congress. He is high energy, sharp, quick-witted, and bright. You can't go wrong with either, but Carolyn Maloney is the better man. She will lead our country into a very green and prosperous future. Carolyn has my complete and total endorsement. She will never let our conservative movement down. Carolyn Maloney is the better. What the heck is going on over here? Who is Carolyn Maloney? Let's find this out. Carolyn Maloney is the better man. I don't know who this is. All right, let's pull this up. Carolyn Maloney. New York 12. National leader, author, number of books. I don't know what the heck that post is. Carolyn Maloney is the better man. Oh, gosh. All right. Thank you for the shout out on reading that one. That is just too funny. Okay, so that came over. What did I do with? Here it is. Words Mean Things. Thank you, Words Mean Things. Says, the way Liz Cheney stopped, took a breath, and tilted her head looks so condescending. I wonder if she really believes herself. I don't think so. I think it's all an act, right? She's Cheney's daughter. These people probably just yuck it up and laugh at each other at country clubs. Sergeant Bob says, yeah, all in on the videos. No reason to turn off the cameras. Go, Donald. News Now says, Rob, this does pose an interesting question. And one, there is not any case law that I can find. Would turn off your security camera be considered a lawful order? And could you be arrested for not following that lawful order? And I think that it depends on the state. My answer would be it depends on the state. Like, for example, Arizona just passed a law about recording officers within a certain distance. And if you come within that distance, then it's going to be illegal. And I've had my perspective on this, if it's 15 feet, and you cross that 15 feet, your version of 15 feet is very different than a police officer's version of 15 feet. And so they'll say you're interfering with a lawful order if you don't turn it off at that point. And then, yeah, you could be arrested for that because you're now violating a lawful order. So if there's enough probable cause that it's a violation of a crime, and if they're giving that lawful order in the context of national security provisions or something, right? Maybe they have the authority to make that order on their private property. But I would say, no, absolutely. I'm not turning anything off. It's my property. And, unless the warrant says turn it off, or you have an order, if you have an injunction to tell me to turn it off, we're not turning anything off. Okay, the warrant says you can go get the boxes. Go get the boxes and get the heck out of here. All right. Happy old cat lady says, I want a happy birthday, even if I have to watch it later as I'm headed out the door to dinner. We rarely eat out, so I'm taking advantage of today. Well, I got to tell you this. Happy old cat lady, Bonnie. Happy birthday, Bonnie. You've been around here. You're such a treasured member of our community. You're always posting. You are always sharing great stories, leaving great comments. And I'm really thrilled and grateful to have you here and a part of what we do. You used to be grouchy old cat lady, but now you're happy old cat lady. And, you and I have sent some emails back and forth, and I really appreciate all that you do and you bring here to the conversation. And I wish you the happiest of all birthdays. And I genuinely mean that. You deserve an awesome dinner. You deserve to be waited on and to not have to think about dishes or cooking or dessert. Get dessert. Hopefully you got it. Get 2 scoops and enjoy it because you deserve it. Have a tremendous and happy birthday, Bonnie. Really grateful for it. Enjoy it. Sergeant Bob says, no use for Pence, political opportunist. Okay, rank and file agents may be okay if they have the right to be a whistleblower, not political operative. Pence takes no stand. That is from Sergeant Bob. Also says, had a nice unplugged weekend in Granger, Indiana with the daughter and their grandkids. 3-hour time change, though, was brutal. Yeah. 3 Girlies says, hey, Pence, unprecedented like the Mar-a-Lago raid? Seems like tons of things that have been unprecedented have been happening a lot lately. Besides, what is unprecedented yesterday is precedented today. All they got to do is do it. Uniparty, establishment, elitists, eye roll. Big time. And so shout out to the youngest girlie over there. Sergeant Bob says probable cause is everything. Says no secret that law enforcement can shop judges. Present the application for warrants to a sympathetic judge and get it signed. TOS Forever says, do you perceive the raid was done to protect Joe Biden and his son? Since laws will be written to control this by the court rulings. I think it's not I think the primary motivation is to derail Trump rather than it is to preserve Biden. It's harm Trump rather than protect Biden. Protecting Biden is just a nice, maybe cherry on top if that happens, but it's a collateral consequence. It's not the primary. TOS Forever says, got that one. Says, Sergeant Bob petrified of the Easter Bunny, China, Russia, not a threat. Dr. Jill, opportunist pushing Sleepy Joe. Miss Lucky says that Sergeant Bob that the admin put forth a person of color to come out with some word salad. Useless. That's his Mark Kelly. Go Blake Masters. That's from Sergeant Bob. News Now says, now that the show is nearly over, sorry, haven't been on the last few months, been busy writing the book on police qualified immunity. Taking a break now between my second and third rewrite. LOL, a lot more work and time than expected. Well, that's awesome. I'd love to buy a copy of that. Yeah, qualified immunity. Now, if you don't follow any of News Now's work, well, you're missing out. First of all, he's in Wyoming, which is the greatest state in America now. And he's covering the news there. And he does really, really sort of heavy lifting legal analysis. And it's really impressive. So he does really good work. I know News Now, I think you told me some time ago, I think it was on one of our member meetups when we used to do those, was I think your Pacer bill was more expensive than my Pacer bill. And I thought, that's pretty good because I'm on Pacer a lot, You're pulling some serious records. We had Vientikis says, since we're talking about Lincoln in the Civil War, I always found this quote of Lincoln interesting. My paramount object in this struggle is to save the Union. And it's not to either to save or to destroy slavery. If I could save the Union without freeing any slave, I would do it. And if I could save it by freeing all the slaves, I would do it. And if I could save it by freeing some and leaving others alone, I would do that also. What I do about slavery and the colored race, I do because I believe it helps save the Union. What I forbear because I do not believe it would help save the Union. I shall do less whenever I shall believe what I am doing hurts the cause, and I shall do more whenever I shall believe doing more will help the cause. Yeah, I mean, slavery is like that easy. The Simpsons have a funny episode about this, right? Apu is like applying for his citizenship there, and he's at the, INS or whatever, immigration. And they're asking him questions, and they say, well, what was the cause of the Civil War? And he says, well, it's a really complicated thing. You see, you had the abolitionists, and you had the anti-abolitionists over here, and you had states' rights, and you had sort of, federalism and the systems between states' rights and taxes and all. And the guy says, just say slavery. And he says, what? Just say slavery. He says, slavery. Slavery it is. And he says, perfect. You're a citizen. Welcome to America. And, it's kind of a funny thing. Everybody boils it down to that. But it is a very interesting question. What happens when you have a dictatorial federal government that is becoming tyrannical and you want to leave? What is the right to do that? And, it's becoming, I think, a pertinent topic these days. So thank you for sharing that, V. Also says, from Pat's the Patriot, also, according to the act, there is no intention to raise taxes on the 400,000. Yeah, we read that one from Rumble. Thank you, Vianticus. I appreciate that one. Former LEO gave us the awesome clip from Harriet Hageman. Thank you, former LEO, on that one. We're going to do a refresh. While we're waiting for that, we had a couple come in. Paul Mino on the MMA channel. We had STFU FFS says the primary in 2020, she got 78,000 of 105 votes. This primary for her opponent got 115,000 votes to her 50,000. Cheney's votes must have been Dems. Yeah, I mean, wow. Thank you for pulling those numbers. Those are brutal. 78,000 down to 50. Alan Mustard says, Rob, love your show. Just became a member to support the show. Glad to see Liz go. Well, welcome, Alan. I'm grateful to have you. And, hopefully you get some of those enjoyable morning walk and talks, 30 minutes, 20 minutes, kind of every day. They're a lot of fun. I really enjoy doing them. And the conversation, I try to hop in the comments and sort of see what you guys are saying and respond, mostly on locals. But we had our last one from D. Boley, a member for 3 months. Speaking of members, welcome to our new members. I'm grateful to have you. And let's see what else we got over on YouTube. Few more came in from Miss Lucky. Sergeant Bob says, Miss Lucky says, do yoga. I know. I need to do it. I need to. I actually signed up for a yoga studio, right? I actually signed up. You want to know? I signed up for 2 yoga studios. Okay. I went over right around the corner. I walk by it all the time. And it's aerial yoga. And I just couldn't do the aerial thing. I don't like to be swinging and hanging upside down and all that kind of crap. So I lasted 1 session. I said, that's it. Then I tried another yoga studio. And the latest class they have is at 6. And guess what? It's 5:48 right now. So I tried to get over there, and it's just not going to happen. I had to cut the show short, and it's not going to happen. So I'm still working the kinks out. And now Paul's like, Rob, yoga, that's kind of lame. Come get your head beat in. And I thought, yeah, that's true. That's my natural element, is getting your head beat in and, your joints twisted out of contortion. It's good for you. Thunder 7 says, today is a good day with Rhino traitor Cheney losing by a huge margin by a Trump-endorsed candidate. No Cheneys, no Bush, no Clinton for the first time in decades. Huge swamp creatures gone. Personal pronouns of the day are MAGA, ultra MAGA. Well, Thunder 7, thank you for your incredible pronouns. I can't one up those. I mean that's just outstanding. MAGA, ultra MAGA. Hopefully those are in your Twitter bios. Vianticus says, Rob, you're kind of like me. I have a genetic defect that causes my sternum to cave in on my heart and lungs. When I found this out in high school, my response was to join the track team. And yes, that was a joke I heard a long time ago in response to former LEO. Okay, so that's good. I don't know what they were talking about. They were talking about, erections and things. I think it was hilarious, but I didn't want to read it because I didn't know if it was a joke or not. It turned out it was. AM here. AM here. Hey, AM, is that the same AM? Maloney signed the letter to NARA. Thank you for, okay. Which one's Maloney? I have to remember that one. Zach Nichols says, producers confirm Liz Cheney will not be back for season 2 of the J6 hearings. Oh, man. Don't you hate that when they take the main character out? You just stop watching the show. You're just like, oh gosh, what's the point? Because the main character, they killed the main. They did that in The Wire. That happened to me in The Wire. After they killed off, what's his name? I don't know what his name is, but I thought this show is ridiculous, and I got really mad about it. So, anyways, Liz Cheney won't be back. Good riddance to her. Thunder7 says, is the J6 show trial still on? I don't watch the fake news. I get my news from you, Rob. And so what's the 411 on Miss Piggy's illegal shenanigans? I don't know. Yeah, the chat has it. Yeah, the chat has the name of the guy who got killed, but I'm not going to say it. Spoiler alert. It says, so what's the 411 on Miss Piggy's illegal shenanigans? Does her big loss last night have any, well, she's still a congressperson, so she's still good until the next election, right? Until the transition that takes place in January. So she's out of the primaries, which means the general election will take place in November, and then Hageman will take office in January, and that's when Liz will be booted on out of there. So it is, we got a little bit of time left on the clock, unfortunately, with old Lizzie Poo, and I'm going to have to deal with that one, but we'll see where that one goes. We had a super chat come in from John McGarvey. He says, as a defense lawyer, can you turn down any clients who you truly think are reprehensible? The answer is yes. Yeah, you don't have to take cases. I mean, if you have an ethical conflict or something, or a moral conflict, there are lawyers who don't want to work on cases involving children because they've got young children, and they just sort of have a disconnect on that. I respect all of those decisions, right? I don't think anybody should be forced to work on a case they're not comfortable on. There are also other lawyers who say, I'll take whatever, right? I'll take any case that comes through the door. Don't care what it is. And so you just have to sort of, find your style as a lawyer. And we even have differences of opinion even within our own firm. Different lawyers will take different cases, and some people don't want to work on some cases. So it just kind of depends. And you always want to find a lawyer that's the right fit for you, that you're comfortable with, that you can say, sort of what your concerns are. It's about comfort. And, if you can't have that level of comfort, you got to really find somebody else. It would be my recommendation. At least that's my philosophy on how all of this works. Some other law firms might tell other lawyers differently. Like, you take the case. If it's our case, take it, right? Deal with it. I don't care. But that's not how we do things at our office. So it's a very good question. And that came in from John McGarvey. And I think that's about it, my friends, for us. I think we covered all the ground that we wanted to cover for the day. Here's Robute. He says, even though they tell you to turn the camera off, wouldn't you still need to record them, because then they can plant illegal material like what the FBI did all the time? Yeah, exactly right. That's why you want to see what they're doing, and that you want to sort of be there and accompany them so you can make objections and say exactly what happened. Because, yeah, what if they took out all the boxes from Trump and they're just like, oh, we're just going to just open up the box, just drop in those nuclear codes, close it up. 821. It's full of nuclear codes now. I don't know where. And you just shove those boxes over in the wayside. So you get a lot of questions about it. And we'll continue to cover it, of course. It's a good question that came in from Robute. FBI did it all the time. We'll see. But it looks like that is it, my friends, for the program for the day. And so we are going to wrap it up right there. I want to thank everybody who sent in those very generous and amazing super chats. I appreciate it. D. Booley, Alan Mustard, STFU, FFS, Paul Mino was in the house, James Jarvis, some guy with cancer. We had many from Bear Ashby, Tara Raynar in the house, Stephen Klein, and I appreciate everybody. On locals, shout out to my friends, Phantasmagloria, STFU, FFS is over there. JC the Music Man, Cassandra's Ghost is in the house. Welcome to Cassandra's Ghost. I haven't seen that one before. We had another one here. Your name before is what I should have said. We have others. Shout outs to my friend Patriot, Pat's the Patriot on Rumbles. Vienti Kisses over there. Anything, Grease Synced, Candy Gas, Mimi's 123, and others. On YouTube, we've got MJ, C. Reed, our members, Shane Souza, Playing Hookies in the house, and others. And so let's take a look and thank all of our supporters on these various locations. Watchingthewatchers.locals.com is where you can join in the fun. Join on YouTube. Click that join button right next to that subscribe button. Please don't forget about our law firm. We talk a lot about some fun topical things here on the channel. but we do have an entire team of people every day in court dedicated to helping good people charged with crimes find safety, find that clarity, and find some hope about their futures. Because the government, just as we talk about here, oftentimes, right, they try to shift the burden onto the defense. They try to make the presumption of innocence something that is not relevant anymore. And we got to hold the line on that, right? We got to hold the line at the ground level, make the government prove their cases, help people the best that we can. We have a whole team of people. We do it every single day. We really appreciate your referrals. They keep us busy. 480-787-0394. We take very good care of everybody, and we love to help people. So thank you for sending them over to us. Big thank yous and shout outs to our mods who mod down the forts for us. The Anticus Prime. Big thank yous to K-Bean, Just Cows in the house, Lean, and Playin' Hooky, all making sure that the chat stays on track for us, and I appreciate that. We get some bots and some trolls in here from time to time, and they eliminate them with haste, and I'm grateful for it. Thank you to our Spotlight supporters who also support the show with a little extra love. Big shout outs to John over at qsimple.com. We've got Chris Romero in the house. David B3 and Dr. EMB are all Spotlight supporters, and they make sure that the support, I make sure the support is going to good use. I've got some new gear coming in. They keep changing the dates on me. They said it was going to be here on Tuesday, then they said Saturday, then they said today, now they say tomorrow. I think the FBI is probably derailing it and inserting all of their spy materials into my new switcher, but I guess I'll have to just debug it when it gets here. All right, and so that, my friends, is it for us for the day. I want to thank you so much for being a part of the show, being so contributory with your thoughts, your comments, with your super chats, and with your memberships. I really do appreciate it. I'm having a ton of fun. I hope you are too. We are going to be back here to do it all again tomorrow. And so I will encourage you to get some nice rest tonight, sleep well, so that we're energized, refreshed, and ready to go tomorrow. Have a great night, my friends. I'll see you all then. Bye-bye.